Alright, welcome back guys, Winter here, and today I have a short guide about Viper tips and decision making. This is something a lot of players, well, they hear Vipers are the counter to this, Blinding Cloud, Abduct, whatever. But pretty much what happens, you make Vipers, you got your Vipers, you go fight, and your Vipers die, and they're completely useless, and you just waste all your money and you lose horribly. And don't tell me that hasn't happened to you, because it's happened to me. So that's what we're going to try to learn to avoid here. But first, I'm just going to show you against Terran and against Protoss. Vipers aren't used very often against Zerg, so just a few tips to start. What I'd like to do with my Vipers, usually I hotkey them separately on a different control group or something like that. That's either 3 or 5 for me because I have my hatch on 4. My army is usually on 1 and 2, depending on what I'm doing. But very important they're hotkeys separately. If you have your Vipers, the only thing that should be on the control group with your Vipers are overseers, because the reason I keep my overseers on the same we'll just jump it in, on the same control group as my Vipers is because they have kind of the same purpose. You want the detection, you want them to be part of the fight, but you don't want them to be in the front lines dying instantly, right? So it's a little bit loud, let's turn it down a bit. But now that we have our Vipers, let's just pretend we're going to have a Roach Hydra army, because usually Vipers and Roach Hydra go together like peanut butter and jelly. But there you go. You got your Roach Hydra army, which the Roach Hydra army pretty strong in a heads-up engagement, but obviously against someone with a bunch of tanks and Thors and Vikings, not going to go that well. So let's see what happens first without Blinding Cloud or without Abduct, and you just kind of aim move everything. I don't have speed on this, but we all know that feel, right? Siege tank's pretty good against your Roach Hydra. But once you add the Vipers in, of course, it's going to go a lot better. Like, you got the Blinding Clouds. Let's say you actually set yourself up in a concave, which is what you want to do before the fight. Roaches in front, Hydras behind. That's all part of the Vipers. Sure, I don't have speed on anything, but I don't need speed is the point we're trying to make right now. So here we go. The Vipers are coming in. Couple Blinding Clouds. And we'll see how that goes. As barely any of the siege tanks can attack. Of course, Blinding Cloud very effective. We all know how this is going to go. The siege tank still might win without the speed, but obviously a significantly better fight. Etc., etc. Alright, we all know how Vipers work. Now, how do you get those Blinding Clouds? Because most of the time, a Terran player that knows you have Vipers is not going to siege up all their tanks in one nice little tasty ball for you to just put some sunglasses on so they can't see you. The best way, I've found, is to the Vipers never come in with the army. Especially, well, just in general, the Vipers never come in with the army. What they do is, once the Terran player is moving, usually he'll scan ahead, he'll try to find your army, he'll scout out with some Hellions or something. The Vipers are almost always off to the side. Making sure that the Vipers are not scouted with the entire main army is very important, because if he sees the Vipers, 1, he's going to zone you out with the Vikings, 2, he's never going to get caught with his siege tanks all in one nice tasty little ball. So, always keeping the Vipers off to the side is very important. Now, we're going to talk about when to abduct versus when to use Blinding Cloud. Now, say you see a couple tanks sieged up here, maybe a Thor or something like that. The deciding factor in whether I'm going to abduct, like I'm going to come take a Thor or something, or I'm going to go ahead and use a Blinding Cloud on this. Usually the deciding factor is 2 things. 1, am I in position to take a fight? If I could take a fight, like a Blinding Cloud, if it would be used during a main fight, then I want a Blinding Cloud. Even if it only hits like 1 siege tank or 2, if I set myself up in a position where his units have to move into the Blinding Cloud, that's really important. 2, are my Vipers going to die if I use them right now? Like, if he has a bunch of Vikings, and I don't really have any anti-air, which happens a lot against mech, then it's likely my Vipers are going to die. They'll get their spells off, but they're going to die. In a lot of cases, if you're abducting, that's going to make them kind of useless. So Blinding Cloud against mech and against Protoss, it doesn't really matter, is usually preferable if you're going to take a fight and you know your Vipers are probably going to be a casualty of that fight. They're kind of like banelings sometimes, where you use them and they're really important, but you're not getting them back all the time. Keeping the Vipers alive is really important, but it's very difficult to do in a straight-up heads-up engagement with a max out. Now, the difference here is if you know your opponent doesn't want to take a fight, like they have to retreat or they know that you can't attack into them, then it's usually better to go for the Abduct. So say we're right here. Obviously, well, before the Vikings get in range, I'll just go get a pickoff and run back. There you go. And you can go back and consume or whatever. But this goes for against Protoss as well. The priority against Protoss is, of course, abducting the mothership core. If you abduct the mothership core, you can put yourself in a real comfortable position, because if he doesn't have recall, he's going to be a lot more, I guess, reluctant to take a fight if he can't just dip out of there at any point. Now, in a more drawn-out game, like if you're against a turtleneck, not turtleneck, but against a player who's going Sky Toss or a player who's going for Sky Terran, usually you have a Corruptor Ball, and then you have your Vipers as well. And what you do, you abduct the air units one at a time, because, of course, Blinding Cloud, a lot of new players don't know, Blinding Cloud does not hit air, and until Legacy of the Void, Vipers are not really useful against air, except for those abducts to get carriers or get ravens or something like that, which is something you can do. And remember, while you're abducting, I just kind of showed it there, you can actually move the other direction while you're abducting, so you don't have to sit there and watch it get abducted. Sometimes that split second is what will keep your unit alive. So, pretty important there. So just kind of the recap. Oh, one more little trick before I recap. Did you know that I'm just gonna build some spore crawlers here. I gotta build some creep. Wait, I don't have any creep. How do I do this? I don't know. Build a hatchery. That usually has creep, right? Alright, now I'll build some spore crawlers. But did you know that unburrowed spore crawlers off of creep you can consume? So we have 200 energy, you can't consume that, but now we don't. You're blind, boys. But you can actually move these like mobile energy platforms right now and consume them while you are moving them with your army, which is kind of fun. Like that's just fun. And also remember, these buildings count in a base trade as well. He has to kill them even though they're moving around the map. But, alright. We're going to recap here. When to abduct, first, having your Vipers away from your main army to the side of the engagement, usually with your Overseers, is far superior to having them just on top of your main army. Using Celestial Army kind of screws over your Vipers. Abducting is useful before the fight or to initiate a fight, but if there's an actual fight happening, like with a large amount of your army supply and a large amount of his, even if there's not that many units in the area, a Blinding Cloud is usually preferable, especially if your Vipers are at risk. Like, if you're going to probably get your Vipers picked off by Vikings, just get the Blinding Clouds as deep into their army as you can, take a good engagement from multiple angles, and ideally you're trying to bait him into sieging up all his tanks at once because he thinks there aren't Vipers there. Same goes for versus Protoss. If there's a lot of Stalkers, I mean, against Protoss, usually picking out the Colossi and the Mothership Core is a priority, because the Gateway army isn't nearly as strong as your basic mech army, but Blinding Clouds can still be extremely effective versus Protoss because it really screws with their AI a lot of the time, especially because they don't have siege tanks that are just going to kind of try to dance out of the Blinding Cloud. They kind of sit there, which keeps their position, but if you can't pick out all the Colossi, then at least getting the Blinding Clouds and pulling back and consuming, because usually against Protoss, if they don't have Templar, you can keep those Vipers alive if you're playing it safe. But just a few little tips there on the Vipers. Remember, they're a huge game-changing unit. A lot of players just don't know how to use them very well. I'm not saying I'm a perfect Viper user, but they do make it possible to kill these huge death ball compositions, especially against players who aren't paying that much attention. At the lower levels, a lot of players die to the death ball. How do I defend the death ball? Well, Vipers are one of your most useful tools in that. But thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, leave in the comments feedback and more ideas for more guides or any questions you might have. And check me out on stream. Thank you guys for watching. Good luck, have fun. Have an amazing day.